Grace and peace. This week in January, each year is designated as the Week of Prayer or the Octave for Christian Unity. In it, we are especially mindful that Christ has one body. And one of the most beautiful biblical texts to lift up this Week of Prayer for Christian Unity comes from John chapter 17. In the high priestly prayer, it's called, of Jesus on the night he was betrayed, he prayed, "I pray that they might be one, as I and the Father are one. I pray that they, my disciples, might be one." God prayed for us. God prayed for our unity. Our unity is a fact. We don't have to try and establish it or work toward it. We live into it. And so, in this week of prayer for Christian unity, I'm really remembering this year my best friend during my New Jersey days as a pastor, Father Jack Lord. He was a Carmelite priest at St. Joseph's, just down the Palisade Avenue from Trinity Lutheran Church, where I served. Big Irish guy, big beard, red hair. His face was the Irish flag. And he was a Southie from Boston, almost a walking cliche. Father Jack, my best friend. Twice, St. Joseph's and Trinity Lutheran Church made pilgrimage of unity to the Holy Land. We were able, in one of those trips, to go to Haifa in northern Israel, by Mount Carmel, and be at the mother house of his order of Carmelite priests. And we lived into that unity together. We shared our ministry together in town. There was at one point just a horrible shooting where Father killed his whole family, and the children had been in our school at Trinity and also at St. Joseph's, some of the children in both those schools. And when people gathered that evening in town, and the crisis counselors were there and all kinds of other people, and Father Jack and I were set up in a room to offer whatever help and counsel we could help. And almost everyone in town came into our room. We were known together as pastors of that town in New Jersey. Father Jack talked about his ordination once, and it was a very interesting observation. He was ordained at the beautiful cathedral in Newark, New Jersey, Sacred Heart, and he remembered thinking that when he would really feel like he was zapped with the Holy Spirit, that this ordination would literally happen, would be when he was on the ground in a prostration, which ordinands do as they prostrate themselves in obedience to their bishop in the chancel of the cathedral. He thought that's when he would really feel it. And instead, three things went through his mind, he said, while he was there on the floor. Number one, it was hot. It was August, and he was wearing a pair of cutoffs under his gown, under his robe, and he was afraid that his legs would show. Second, there were these roving photographers walking around among the people in the chancel, and he was afraid he would be stepped on. And third, he was afraid he wouldn't remember when to get up, and he'd be lying there when everyone else was standing up. And instead of intimations of immortality as he lay there on the ground, instead the very real human feelings of vulnerability, vanity, and insecurity went through his mind. And that's a good reminder. Father Jack is a good reminder as we get set to welcome, God willing, a new pastor after our vote this coming Sunday. And that is that we are welcoming a flawed human being like you and me, like all of us. God takes real people, and calls them into ministry. And so we have to allow for each other to be real, to be human. And I hope we'll remember that. Maybe my memory of Father Jack will help us as we welcome Pastor Kyle, another redeemed sinner, into our midst as our pastor. Father Jack got very sick near the end of his life. I had moved on. I was on the bishop's staff, and then I became the bishop in New York, and I'd heard from Father Jack's friends that he was near dying. And so I went to see him, and he nodded at the black box with bread and wine. And in that nod, he couldn't talk, was asking me to give him communion. The Lord's Supper, not Rome's, not Geneva's, the Lord's Supper. That nod meant so much to me as he allowed me to commune him on his deathbed. Every year at the Reformation, on Reformation Sunday, there would be flowers on the altar and a card which said, "We are remembering with you and giving thanks for God's magnificent rebel, Martin Luther." And it was signed by Father Jack and your church family at St. Joseph's. The week of prayer for Christian unity. Jesus prays for us this week that we may be one.